Okay, so here's the deal. This is kind of a sequel to the Winter Journal video I released about 2 weeks ago, and I wanted to thank you guys for the response. I really didn't think anyone would even watch it, and I assumed if they did, it would be a bunch of people downvoting it and telling me to keep all that crap to myself. But you guys have been amazingly supportive, and I really appreciate that. Now, with this journal, I have no intention of wallowing in any sort of lousy feelings, and the reason is because, despite my situation during the trip itself, I actually loved New Zealand. But the problem is that I don't have anywhere near as much to say about it as I did the UK trip. Because, well, for one, this wasn't my first time traveling internationally, so there's nothing to really talk about there, since I covered all of that in my UK diary last year. And there isn't really all that much to say about the endearing strangeness of being a focal point at a car meet because, well, again, I covered all of that in my UK diary last year. I also don't want my observations to overlap with Mr. Regular's too much, which is fine because I think we both took away different things from our time there. So this will probably be a pretty short video, if only because I'm going to be sitting here going over everything I loved about New Zealand in a sort of rambling format. I mean, I don't even know that I'm going to be sticking strictly to the timeline of the things that happened and when. And for the most part, I think that'll be fine because the things I didn't like basically boiled down to the oppressive sunshine, and that's about it. And at the end of the day, what kind of complaint is that, really? So everything else is probably going to be stupid positive. So on we go. Now, first off, flying Air New Zealand was a wonderful experience. Those 12 hours really just zoomed by between the free movies, TV shows, and games on the little screen in the front of the seat, the better-than-average meals that they'd routinely wake you up from your nap to serve, and the booze they didn't seem to mind offering. Now, with that said, none of the flight attendants actually woke me up while they were handing out the arrival cards. So when Brian and I went through customs, I didn't have a card on me, so we had to step out of line and walk all the way around to the service desk so I could get a new card, fill it out, and return it back to the agent in front. We step out of the airport and into the New Zealand summer, and even though we're no farther from the airport, I can already tell that this is a foreign country that isn't going to feel all that foreign in the grand scheme of things. Between the ubiquitous American fast food restaurants like KFC, Burger King, McDonald's, and Wendy's, and our shuttle driver to the car rental agency who was totally American, although I couldn't place his accent, it was somewhere in the South. It's pretty surprisingly simple to drive in New Zealand once you go through the line at the car agency. They basically just make you watch a video on the rules of the road in New Zealand and what kind of trouble you can get into if you don't abide by them. Again, it felt a lot like home, sort of a DMV situation. But hey, I didn't mind it, and not the least of which because I'd just gotten off of a 12-hour flight where the man in the seat next to me spent the better part of the evening into the next morning going through 2 barf bags and multiple bathroom trips. I remember him waking me up to excuse himself so he could use the bathroom, which was no problem. I understand the struggle, naturally, and I tried to stay awake for his return, but couldn't keep it together. I woke up sometime later to find he hadn't returned to his seat, so I figured he'd died or something, and so I went back to sleep. By the next morning, he had somehow reacquired his original seat without having woken me up, which I consider pretty impressive, considering how tightly packed we'd been in there. I often found myself wondering about that guy, and if he was ever okay again, or if his entire New Zealand trip just involved vomiting in increasingly beautiful places. But now I'm getting off topic, and I don't plan on talking your ear off for another 42 minutes, so... Anyway, I talked about Piha Beach in the last video, but what I neglected to mention was the people there. The girlfriends being carried across the scorching hot sands on the backs of their bachelorette runner-up looking boyfriends. Girls in short shorts and fashionably pained expressions migrating south, but taking the long way around like some flightless bird. Even around their boyfriends, they speak in hushed, excited tones, as though they're all single and a boy they like is 10 paces ahead. Everyone here is stupid beautiful, to the point where I wonder if living in New Zealand for long enough would somehow arbitrarily make me hot too. Like a portal you step through that shapes you into the ideal version of yourself. Like being Billy Batson, but without having to shout out Shazam first. Anyway, when we meet up with our hosts, Andrew Lamb and Isaac Blomfield of Camshaft Software, the makers of Automation, a video game for every gearhead who said, I could make a better car company. Well, this is your... Oh, wait, okay, sorry, I'm getting off topic. We meet up with Andrew and Isaac, and we ended up in this hotel in a place called Otahuhu that had no air conditioning and windows that didn't open all the way. So Brian and I stuck stuck our pillows in the fridge during the day so they'd be cool at night, even though I probably should have just stuck my pillowcase in the freezer. But it's neither here nor there. Auckland is the part of New Zealand that looks like a far cleaner version of home, so everything felt vaguely familiar. I mean, you could be forgiven for mistaking Auckland for Pittsburgh at times. Now, for the majority of the trip, I made a point of not really looking at the itinerary, so I had no blessed idea what we were even doing from day to day, which is fine because apparently our first few days in the country were free days where we could do whatever we wanted and adjust to being in a different hemisphere altogether. I adjusted by watching the Royal Rumble, since it was airing live on Eastern Standard Time in the US and the heat wouldn't let me nap off the jet lag. Not that jet lag is a thing you can really nap away, but luckily I'm able to finish the entire Royal Rumble before we head out to dinner, and it's a pretty interesting spot known as Elliot's Stables, this food court that's dark with oak everything, and various shops from which you can order your lunch or dinner. Service is slow, and none of the servers in the food court seem to know where any of the tables are since it's fairly cluttered, despite being a pretty wide open area. It's to the point where patrons loudly applaud the arrival of food, as I eat a burger and fries and drink a heavy foreign beer, the make of which I can't remember because I'm an asshole and forgot to keep track of these things for the people who give a damn about them. I did notice that a sign at the Elliot Stables asks patrons to inquire about bookings, at which point I came to the realization that inquire is an anagram for the name Enrique. Yeah, that's all I got. Basically, when you're at Elliot Stables, you're in a place where every group of people that arrives looks like a field trip. And it's sort of that way at the beach, too, but it's not like I could blame anybody for coming to spots like these in droves. This is the kind of beauty you can't trust, with a moon like a spotlight, and a green light on the other side of the water like it's the great goddamn Gatsby, and water as blue as the balls of an edging enthusiast. It's crazy. I feel like I'm on a soundstage for a big budget blockbuster, but really I'm just in some local beach with a playground that the four of us climbed around despite being grown-ass men. But could you blame us? There were rope ladders and rope tunnels and slides and giant hamster wheels to run in, and those classic sit-down merry-go-rounds. This entire country feels like a cross between Martha's Vineyard and a foreign place you win a trip to in the Showcase Showdown. The days are filled with filming, yes, but we're driving exotic, weird cars on the side of the road and getting bad at by wandering sheep. And the nights are filled with a haze of good beer and borrowed lingo. We walked briefly past an open mic night in downtown Auckland where a man was playing The Boxer by Simon and Garfunkel, but an even sadder version, to which Brian noted, "I never thought I could hear that song played any slower." And he was right. In a sense, sadness almost felt like something that had to be manufactured here, because everyone was so damn nice, and the weather was even nicer, despite the fact that the hole in the ozone layer over the country pretty much meant that I had to bathe in sunscreen if I didn't want to be lit up like a Roman candle. Yes, I know what I just did there. During filming days, in between the parts where I'm needed, I stop at a cafe down by Marae Tai Beach and order a tea and a slice of orange almond cake that's more moist than the front row of a Richard Marx concert in 1989. The cafe has bare walls, and I wonder why there are no paintings or posters or pictures adorning the wall, before realizing that nothing they could hang would be prettier than the view out the open doors and windows. The North Island is a land of strong milkshakes and stronger coffee, and a cultural argument over who invented the flat white, because we sure as hell aren't having any flat whites this good back at home. We're not even having breakfasts this good back at home. The Seashore Cabaret in Wellington basically delivered one of the best breakfasts I've ever had in my goddamn life, and all I got was avocado toast and bacon, because I'm a millennial and have no ambition to become a homeowner apparently. The Seashore Cabaret is a pretty wonderful little establishment with pinball machines, the fortune teller from the movie Big, and photos of children boxing for an audience of old men some 70 years ago, because I guess watching children knock each other's baby teeth out counted for entertainment back then. The food has an aroma on that delicious middle ground between perfect and burnt. And as we wait to be seated, a child in line is scared of the fortune teller, so Brian steps in front of the machine to shield the screaming child from having to look at it. You know, because Brian's a good dude. Okay, so Wellington evenings. Oh yeah, we're in Wellington now. Well, they're like the autumn that Eastern PA never got this year. And the airports are like bus terminals signaling that air travel isn't quite so daunting. Back home, flight always feels like such a big deal, such an occasion, something you should wear something nice to do, something you should expect a lot of bureaucratic grief for even trying to do in the first place. But not here. Everything is just so laid back and so chill. Everywhere we went, and in every situation we encountered, we were met with a degree of friendliness that forced us to confront the inadequacy of our own pleasantries. of hellos that didn't convey enough welcome, of thank yous that didn't convey the proper depth of gratitude. At our fan meet the night before the Leadfoot Festival, it was just one awesome person after another, coming up to thank us for what we do, to ask us how we were enjoying our experience so far, and making all sorts of offers of cars to review while we were there, although we just didn't have the time. And my sorries never felt sincere enough, and I always felt like I was coming across like a dismissive jackass, but I'm gradually getting used to the idea that even in the context of fan meets, I can't be all things to all people at all times, and I don't know that anyone wants or expects me to be. People just want to hang and chat, and so that's what we did, and we took pictures, and we signed things, and then we hit the road. You can check out my Leadfoot Festival video to see how that went, but needless to say, it was a show swallowed up by a ton of acreage and a big, big crowd. And now my timeline is all out of whack because this was before we even went to Wellington, but long story short, we eventually checked into an Airbnb in Greytown, which was voted New Zealand's most beautiful small town for 2017. I'm exhausted, but mainly because we're in the second week slump, which happens with any trip of ours that lasts more than a week. But much like Bruce Banner's secret is that he's always a little angry, mine is that I'm always a little tired, so I'm kind of used to functioning in that state. And so it was when we went to Hard Park, which you can experience by checking out Brian's video on it, considering that I spent the entire afternoon in a bathroom throwing up, because I took my anxiety medication before realizing I had nothing to wash it down with, and by the time I did get something to wash it down with, it had already started dissolving in my esophagus and leaving me with heartburn on the scale of swallowing an infinity stone. I mean, do we even know that infinity stones are hot? Who knows and who cares? I'm assuming they would kill you anyway. Long and short of it is that I took it as a lesson. Remember the Hard Park heartburn. Always have water with you wherever you go, and preferably food if you're going to be taking pills. But that's just for shooting days, not in general. I'm not saying to literally have food with you everywhere you go, but I digress. As we neared the end of our journey, I remember Brian inviting me outside to look at the stars, because we have nothing like this back at home due to light pollution. I wasn't expecting to see much, but it really was something else. It was like being in a planetarium, but it wasn't a field trip, so the show didn't have to end. And I just lay there next to Brian, my boss, my friend, watching the stars and the constellations. It never occurred to me that there would be stars. So damn many of them. The final leg of the trip brought us to the Johnstons' farm, with Juliet and her husband Bryce, who made for one hell of a grill master when we came by to visit. We played with their dogs, Tahi, Stella, Rocky, and Carrie? I want to say the dog's name was Carrie, I don't know. But we ate heavy meats and light salads and drank whiskey and threw sticks for the dogs, who ran amongst the sheep and the cows and the horses, a delicate ecosystem of biological chaos. We went to the offices of Camshaft Software because my timeline is getting distorted, and we played virtual reality racing games and searched for the comfort of a virtual breeze as we crashed time and time again. We did a stream of Automation's latest build, and we spent our last nights enjoying beer in Caswell Parker's house, recording an episode of the RCR podcast, and eating the best Indian food I've ever tasted. And why is time escaping from me now? I find we're suddenly back in Los Angeles and doing the Smoking Tire podcast, and Brian goes to meet up with an old friend, so I have the afternoon to myself. So I disappear into the Peterson Automotive Museum because I've never been, and I go on the tour of the secret cars they've got in the basement that you're not allowed to film. And then I take a stroll on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and accidentally catch an eyeful of dick when I turn my head to confirm that yes, this man is taking a leak in front of the Palladium outside the Dua Lipa concert. A sentence that wouldn't have even made sense to me 2 years ago. And I find the stars of stars I consider stars, and I drink $18 whiskey in a bar near the Pantages Theater where they used to have the Oscars, because I met a girl and went to Rochester once and fell in love with whiskey. I searched for a bathroom as the sun set and the darkness could only rise exponentially, and I wandered into a Scientology museum and was offered a coupon for free entry. I left without leaking, freaked out by the giant bust of L. Ron Hubbard's head standing in front of an indoor waterfall, somehow majestic and tacky at the same time. We meet Matt Farah for dinner at this amazing Asian restaurant, and we talk, and it gets dark, and we drink heavier beers, and it gets darker. I don't know what my life is or what it's become. I just know that I love it. That I get to go to places like New Zealand and Los Angeles and the UK, and that I get to see people in all those places, and that I feel respected or even liked in all those places, and I get to shake hands and make connections in different countries, different continents, different hemispheres. If this is all there is, I think I'll be okay. I'm going to be okay. I am okay.